Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Talk Cosmos, and today is July 13th. Actually, to be totally transparent, it's on the 11th, but that's because I'm working with a lot of Uranus, and aren't we all? It is like smack dabbing, changing a lot of vibrations, and we're just catching up, and it's working. It's working. It's hopscotch, jump rope, and a bunch of other things that we haven't even invented yet, because it's these cosmic realities. Yes. Does that even relate? Yes, because we're going to find out they're moving into forms of consciousness. Yes, they are. And this talk is going to be a dynamic one, and we're going to begin. It's time for Planet Buzz for Alakazam.
Focusing on perspectives of pattern planet cycle relationships and understanding their archetypal energy consciousness, reflecting through history, current events, mythology, and philosophical questions. These are the members of Planet Buzz.
I'm Sue Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
And I'm Dr. Laura Tad. I work as a spiritually oriented psychological astrologer with students and clients around the world. As a counselor, writer, and educator, I love helping people recognize their inner strengths, take advantage of auspicious moments, and navigate times of challenge with greater ease. On my own podcast, Mythic Sky Storytime, I discuss astrology, mythology, and actualizing our full potential. Learn more at mythicsky.com.
Plus, a special guest who we will introduce in just a short moment.
And as the ancient Hermetic code reveals,
as below, so above. As above, so below.
Hi, Laura, Dr. Tad.
Hey, it's good to be back.
It is, always. We're starting off a new month. Well, this is Uranus at 0 degrees Gemini that just occurred a few days ago on the 7th. I've been feeling it. I think we've been feeling it for a lot, right?
Yeah. My AC went out the day it got into yours, so that was my experience of its ingress.
I have a baby refrigerator. Mine went out, but things are working. And we have a great guest, Rick Levine, that many in the Seattle area know. Hi, Rick. You're coming in. I can see you're coming in.
I am here.
Uh-oh. What happened to Rick?
Well, Rick is
I
almost
know he's
here.
there.
Yeah, I see.
Here he is.
It's just like a little bit of lightning, right? The light's on, the light's off. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Sue. Hey, Laura.
Hey.
And thank you for coming along for this journey with us. And Rick Levine, it is ricklevineastrologer.com. He has a YouTube channel, a Patreon, Instagram, on Astrology Hub. There's lots of ways to find him. Just Google Rick Levine. Dr. Laura Tad at Chattanooga Hills in Georgia is mythicsky.com. And she has a brand new website, and she has a...
Well, it's been this website forever. It's just got a big facelift.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it looks beautiful. It looks... Am I doing that? Okay, I probably am. It's a little bit of flash bam alakazam. Okay, it's mythicsky.com, and you have a YouTube channel, and you do a podcast. So it's fun. And Talk Cosmos. Rick Levine here, he's a world-renowned astrologer. He's a consultant, teacher, scholar, author. He does lectures. In fact, there will be a wonderful one in Goa, India. He does this about 3 years now running, yes?
Yeah, it's the fourth time in India, but yeah, same place.
Yeah,
it's an Ayurvedic healing spot. It's a magical place, and it will fill up, but we still have room. So
good.
Yeah, it's at an Ayurvedic healing spot in the south end of Goa. on the beach or just a 3-4 minute walk down to a beautiful beach. And it's a 12-day, 11 day, 12 night, kind of event. It's fantastic.
It's a good saturation. That's a wonderful time length. And for those folks, many I know about this, don't be interested, but Rick has this gift of bridging gaps between, well, not just this and that, but between spirituality, astrology, head, heart, and he's written.
How about between ignorance and awareness?
There we go. Bring the light on. Thank you. Okay, so folks can read this, but again, he is a co-founder of Star IQ, if you remember that, and the Kepler College of Astrology, which is, I think, #1 now for astrology. So thank you, Rick, and many awards. It's exciting to see the path that you're creating. So we're sharing it tonight. Thanks. Uranus, there it is, on its side, rotating backwards, out in the hemisphere, breaking the rules, changing the rhythms.
Yeah, doing the unconventional. Yeah,
Uranus is the only planet that goes around the sun with its like North Pole facing the sun. Right. And kind of rolling like a bowling ball rather than on a vertical axis like all the other planets.
Yeah. Sort of sets them up to knock them down. I think that was an old joke I heard. It hasn't. Right. Yeah. Uranus is exciting. It is unconventional in the moment because it's concerned with vibrational astrology. And I do that. It's right now. It doesn't care about the past or the future, only what's happening in the moment. And really that's where the action is right now. This is just a quick slide to show people, and for those that are listening on the podcast, but it ingressed a couple days ago on the 7th. It actually leaves in 2033 in May on the 22nd. That's 7 years. And there'll be a retrograde cycle starting in November and then until next April on 2026. There's different mythologies. I have one, Laura has another. We're adding both of these. And Rick added extra good themes too. So this is a collaboration. Uranus is a primordial god coming from the void, or is called the chaos. And chaos I love because it really isn't any more than just unmagnetized moments that need to get some kind of system. And that's pretty much what it is. He did birth the Titans. And in that, but it wasn't a leadership forever, because as the mythology goes, his son, a Titan god, Saturn, decided to castrate and stop that fertility that he was having with Gaia, his mate, because Uranus didn't really like the forms. And in my mind, that only makes sense because when you get the spiritual idea, just as we are, like our prenatal charts or prenatal eclipses, we come into form best we can, right? Round hole, square peg, or whatever it is. So there you go. But it wasn't the last word, because Uranus said, okay, fine, you take over, but I'll give you 3 things. I'll give you Venus, who is Aphrodite. So anything you desire, you can get. Good, bad, you figure it out. And the next was the Furies, which is there will be social order, because what comes around goes around, and you'll find out. And the last was Giants, which I often wondered what was Giants. And for this talk, I discovered it's, according to what I understand, forces of nature. There is more that we're controlled with all the time. And sometimes I think that's a saving grace. Any comments? Should we?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of different ways of interpreting it from an archetypal perspective. And you can, to some degree, even think about the Furies, in particular with this idea of like social justice, or as like a parallel perhaps to karma. And we can see of like, what is it, that idea of where we can see Uranus reflective of karmic issues in a chart, that maybe that's part of that through line. from an archetypal perspective, with that sort of the coming out of the void chaos energy that's Uranus energy, and that Uranian expect the unexpected, right? That's sort of the thing with Uranus, is like you can't really do too much prediction with Uranus, because then you're expecting it and it won't be that.
No.
So just having that going with the flow is a big part of the Uranus energy.
Learning to zigzag.
And the shock of the awakening process with Uranus, we moderners just can't quite understand what it must have been like to be alive at the time of the discovery of Uranus, because for, at least, 1800 years or so, Saturn was the end of the road. There was nothing beyond Saturn. And all of a sudden, overnight, with the discovery of Uranus, the size of our little solar system, the size of our little empire here, tripled in size. And went from a 30-year or 29-year cycle to an 84-year cycle, and it was absolutely shocking. We just can't quite grasp how shocking that was.
It is going. I hadn't thought of it in quite those terms of a shock, a surprise, because I think of that in terms of the ancients when they could only see the sky and it was so dark, and trying to get the reality of just life and all its communication. But yes.
Well, and what that shock then opens up is possibility. Like, if we didn't know that, what else don't we know? Right.
Well, that's right. And it's the it's the shock of awakening. It's the shock of the limitations not being there. It's the shock of Saturn not being the end of the road, the end of the universe, the end of life, the end of anything. That Saturn is really just a transition point.
Yeah.
Now we know, from physical to metaphysical.
And I suppose for myself, I always was thinking about eternity as a kid, because the stars, they go forever. This is true. Here we go. Okay, Rick.
So Uranus really only has one job, and its job is to resolve irresolvable opposites. And we think, how can that possibly happen? How can irresolvable opposites be resolved? But in fact, what happens in nature is that you have warm, wet air, which creates negative ions. Negative ions are what makes us feel good. It's why we like being by a waterfall or by the surf, at a beach or a murmuring brook or even a shower. That creates negative ionization. And then you have cold, dry air coming in, and that's positive ions. And as these two air masses meet and they try to work it out, psychology will tell us, as I'm sure Dr. Laura would tell us, that in psychology, we learn that when there's stress or tension, you talk about it to find a way to work it out. Uranus, though, reminds us that there are those things that the more we talk about, the greater the tension becomes.
Yeah.
And this is the great misnomer, excuse me, the great misnomer of psychology, that everything can be talked about. There are things, we all have things in our lives, in certain relationships or situations, that we just can't talk about. And when we don't, that tension gets greater and greater. The more these two air masses rub up against each other, the greater the tension becomes, until it's irresolvable. And that's when Uranus goes, and the lightning strikes, and just in that brief moment, it clears the air. It doesn't resolve the deeper inner issues, but it brings things out into the open. And that's why Uranus is related to shock.
I always love that definition. That is totally clear. And I'm thinking music could help a lot, because music can weave in.
Yeah, well, music brings in that softer Neptunian transformation rather than, But the thing about Uranus, and I think Laura has already said this, like lightning, Uranus strikes. We can be in the middle of a storm and we can know that there's going to be lightning, but we still don't know when and where. And that's the thing about Uranus. When that lightning strikes, when the gap is jumped, when that tension resolves in that split second, you never can actually predict how and where and when that moment is going to occur.
Alakazam.
Yes. And therefore Uranus is electrical, as opposed to the music of Neptune, which is more magnetic. And crazy as it is, the electromagnetism was discovered by this Danish university professor in 1819, 1820, when there was a Uranus-Neptune conjunction. Uranus is electrical, Neptune is magnetic. And at that conjunction, he coined the term electromagnetism because, and it's kind of crazy, but Uranus is electrical, it's nervous system, it's shocking, it's on and off, it's lightning striking.
And that eureka moment, that aha, that suddenly that,
the light bulb going off.
Yeah, pushing through that inertia that's that Saturnian energy, and then you go.
Yep. The ideal is, I'm thinking of like it bubbles and there's an explosion of thought, but other times it's just it's like a pause control. It's like you're just witnessing. Maybe that's it. Witnessing.
And as such, Uranus often is shocking, and it brings us into, I think, again, like Laura said, there's new options, there's new potential. And in a way, Uranus is tied to the future, is tied to technology, because once the limitations of Saturn are broken through, there's potential and possibility and technology that we didn't know even existed.
Like synapse in the brain, they jump across.
Yep.
It's just like,
which is an electrical action.
Yeah, and they will recreate given time if there's a damage or if you just are learning new things.
Yeah.
Prometheus, Richard Tarnas brought forth this idea of Prometheus. Laura?
Well, just so looking at from a mythological perspective, rather than just looking at Uranus in myth, that the mythology of Prometheus very directly has overlaps with what, as astrologers, we've seen, at least in personal astrology, to be a manifestation of that. And so the rebel with a cause, that's very much the Promethean story, the inventor, creator energy of Prometheus being the Titan who created humans. And so that inventive energy that is part of, that we see manifest with Uranus, is very much part of the Promethean story. And the rebel that he and his brother Epimetheus fought with the gods in the War of the Titans. So that's that rebellious energy. And then he rebels against Zeus when he steals fire, even to give it to humans, despite the fact he's been told he can't give humans fire. And so it very much lines up with this idea of that rebellious, inventive, cutting edge, always forward thinking. You don't need to see you don't need the map that Saturn needs. You just are in that inventive energy and defiant, but not in a combative way that we would see with Mars. It's again, that like rebel with a cause energy.
For that purpose of giving, I'm thinking of elevation. We think of Uranus and Aquarius as merging those a little bit here with the sign of elevating the consciousness of the collective. So here, Prometheus is giving the spirit of life, fire to people. There's a little question. Go ahead.
There's a wonderful book that came out, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago. That's not an astrology book, but it actually just brings this point home. The name of the book is Stealing Fire. And it's about how there's a modern movement based upon the intersection of a few things, including digital technology and the mastery of that on an individual neurological kind of biohacking way, it kind of intersecting with neurophysiology and psychedelics or entheogenic substances. And the idea here, again, is stealing fire is what Prometheus did. And humans are, again, moving into that realm of godhood, taking, personalizing some of these things that used to be only, reserved for the divine proportion.
The divinity and the mortality. Yes, it's quite a legacy. In fact, with Gemini, that's what the next one is. Those twins, they keep going between the two matters. The two matters, spirit and matter, ethos and ground, however we want to put it. Castor, the mortal, Pollux, the immortal, that even through death remain connected and mirror each other. They're not exactly the same, but they are the messengers of.
Yeah, well, and I think, with the part of how I understand with the mythology too, is then there's this seeking energy that we have in Gemini, in one being mortal and the other being immortal, right? That when Castor dies, Pollux feels this whole missing piece that he's always seeking to fill. That's part of that constant distraction of Gemini, and that constant movement of Gemini is sort of that data gatherer that we give Gemini as energy, is like trying to find this missing piece because the mortal side is gone. And so that seeking energy that we're moving into with Uranus now there, that it almost like it's this inventive energy squared, right? We're like, from a mathematical perspective, it's just this repeated theme of seeking innovation, seeking new knowledge, seeking new ways of understanding old things, and inventing, like the discovery of Uranus that happened with Uranus and Gemini, that what we don't even know what we don't know, right? So who knows what could be revealed in these next 7 years.
Well, yes. And the thing about Gemini, that a lot of people try to write Gemini off, and Mercury as the ruling planet of Gemini, as lightweights. And it's easy to forget that Gemini is what holds the key between the two worlds, this world and that world. That Mercury, if he had one single job, his job was psychopomp. And in other words, Mercury was guiding souls between the two worlds. And yes, it's a sense of seeking, as you said, Laura, but it's also the guidance between the physical and the metaphysical, or life and the Bardo states, the life after death, or the in-between states. And so Uranus in Gemini has a tremendous potential of awakening that awareness into the communication between these two worlds, which I think we're right on the threshold of.
I love that, because I totally have, that's my perspective, is that it's sharing the Bardos, or the spiritual, and it's intuitive with Uranus. So yes.
And for people who don't know, Bardo is just a Tibetan word that kind of technically translates as in between states, but it really means the states of consciousness that are not attached to physicality.
And Mercury itself, just as the planet, is always in the shadows. Usually, I mean, not always, but predominantly it's under the beams. It's so close, only 28 degrees away from the sun, that it's rare. Well, it can be rare to actually see Mercury, because it's either at dusk or dawn. It's always at twilight, and it's a favorite time of day for me. And and it, and so you have to really search.
Well, and so that idea of that liminality, right, is sort of that part of the state, that it's that in between, that threshold energy, right, that we give Hecate. It's like that things have yet to be formed in some ways, the energy there. And so then what's
things
possible?
Are formed and have yet to be uninformed, or let's say
deconstructed.
Thank you. Yeah.
So here we are. There'll be more charts, but just to hone in on this date, it was July 7th. This is at Greenwich, where time actually in this world that we live in begins, as far as east and west. And it was in the morning at 7:45 and 26 seconds. If you don't have those seconds, you can round it off to 2046, but otherwise you'll have Uranus and Taurus. This is a 0 degrees Aries chart, so the houses really don't make a difference here. It's just showing.
It's true, but let's just make a mental note of that moon at 4 Sagittarius, because that 4-degree point will become important as the year unfolds. And also, and I know there's more slides on this, Sue, but just the fact that this opposition between the moon in Sagittarius and Uranus and Venus having just conjoined, and both having moved into Gemini. Uranus has an 84-year cycle, only moves in from Taurus into Gemini every 84 years. But when we look at the planets, the other outer planets of Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, they're all forming this magical sextile trine interface that's going to become the predominant pattern of 25, 26, 27, 2025, 26, and 27.
It's enduring. It's it's they call it angel wings. Sue Tompkins, I think. But it's so many collaborative energies there. And thank you for the moon, because in Sagittarius, looking at Jupiter that just ingressed in fact, it's mutual reception, right? For astrology language with Jupiter. So building or feeling what kind of stories we have with the moon, and what philosophy and perspective do we have. And pretty much what we're looking at is like, whose story, every family has their own story, but it's many stories.
Well, and just that expansion energy, right, that we get with that Sagittarius moon. I mean, that can.
And contraction, what was Saturn? Yeah, it's right. Okay. This, Rick, came around, is popular now with Laura and me, because Laura listened to some talk you gave, and it was about the point of Thales. So boy, we use this. And for those folks that don't know, there's an opposition. Two planets have an opposition. It could be nodes, whatever. And then there's a third planet that has a flow of a trine at 60 degrees, 120 degrees, or a sextile of 60 degrees. So it's like this force that can wedge around and work things out. And in this, just what you were talking about, Rick, here we go with the moon opposite, right? What's in my chart?
Uranus, Venus.
Uranus and Venus.
I've got that at 29 degrees, right? Uranus.
Right. But here we have Pluto at the point of Thales, because it is releasing the pressure or the tension from the moon opposition, because it's sextile the moon on one side of the opposition and trine the Venus-Uranus on the other. And then we have this rare Saturn-Neptune. Not that Saturn-Neptune conjunctions are that rare. They happen every 36 years, but they've never in recorded history happened at 0 degrees of Aries, which they will next February. And that Saturn-Neptune right now is at the point of Thales to the moment of Uranus moving into Gemini, because they, Saturn and Neptune, are trine the moon on one side of the opposition and sextile the Uranus and Venus on the other side. And again, the points of Thales are just natural flowing release points from the tension that's created by the tug of war of the two planets that are in the opposition.
So we're really transforming, we could say, as we know, we're in this enormous transition. But with Saturn and Neptune, that's a very spiritual energy, according to vibrational astrology, Linda Berry, that I'm teaching with, David Cochran. So I'm hoping that language that you're talking about, with all the communication between Gemini, we will learn to have our ESP working a whole lot better.
Well, and I think some of that Saturn, Neptune, the potential of that, because there's different ways of interpreting that conjunction for sure, regardless of sign, but that it can be spiritual discipline. And that I think is one of the ways through some of these complicated times we find ourselves in.
Well, to get spiritual consciousness, and I'm supporting what you're saying, one does need to focus on skills such as meditating, if nothing else, and different aspects.
But in that, Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, but in that, like, Saturnian, like, okay, meditate, but like actually every day, as opposed to you say that you'll do it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good point.
And not to be a Debbie Downer, every aspect and every planetary energy always has, different ways of manifesting. And we can say that Neptune creates a spiritualization of matter, a sense of the magic and the animation to that which seems to be dead. On the other hand, it can also be a great sense of disillusionment when we realize that the dream, the imagination, the Neptune doesn't match up with the three-dimensional world around us. And Neptune conjunct Saturn can also be a heavy level of denial of the magic that's out there. I mean, everything works in multiple ways.
Yeah,
it must.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with you, and that is very true. And the beautiful part, though, here I am, Pollyanna, whatever, I guess, maybe as Dad once said. But the point is that to find the truth, I know Maurice Fernandez always says that that's what Neptune's job is. It's what is the truth. And by finding the truth, it's a lot like Kubler-Ross, this 8, of grief, because one is totally in shock. It's somewhat like, what? It's not my fairy tale of everything is okay. I can get stung by a bee. But you go through these phases until finally, well, if one can latch on to the truth of things, it is sobering.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we need to take a break, darn it, and we don't have enough. Rick, I added these because I know you're teaching at Kepler College, and I love quintiles, playful, and septiles, which is internal, faded. But do you have a thought? Did you want to comment on these?
Oh, yeah, just briefly. I mean, the magic of this time is that, in particular, the quintiles are incredibly strong. And I would also say, and I looked at the chart, but I didn't actually, save it or put it into the into the system here. But the thing is that not only are these cyan-colored lines are all quintiles are based on a 5-pointed star, 1/5 and 2/5 of a circle. And when we look at these two charts, the septiles are not that strong. They're there. And just from a hum, the quintiles are incredibly strong. But what doesn't show here is that Chiron is actually a half a quintile to the nodes on one side and a half a quintile to the Venus-Uranus on the other. And the sun is also at that same, Jupiter is also at that same half quintile point. And so what we have is the north node to Chiron, to Uranus, Venus, to Jupiter, to Mercury, making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on a 10-pointed star. And so and remember, Johannes Kepler, who's the guy who introduced or discovered quintiles and biquintiles, also discovered and wrote about semi-quintiles and sesquiquintiles. And so the magic here in this ingress, I think, is very significant. That's enough to say, I think, about
Goody.
that.
Well, then we'll wait and see.
Should we take a break then?
I guess we need to take a break, rats. Okay, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Thank you. Thank you, Rick Levine, and thank you, Dr. Laura Tad. Okay, see ya. Whoops. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. Currently, we are in the period of Cancer. By leading a cycle based on connecting mental communication to the external, the energy of Cancer involves emotions, which create our personal story through our emotional associations and attachments. As a cardinal water sign that is nurturing, Cancer needs to process emotions in one's own internal rhythm of cycles in order to complete an evolution.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to the Ananda Institute of Living Yoga, we cover the world of animals. This week, July 20th, it's BEST, Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique, Neuroenergetic Balancing, Rasmussen Reset, and Energy Codes Sunday. Dr. Nels Rasmussen and Linda Rasmussen join us, and together they'll help callers and their animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues. Hope you can join us and plan to call in. Martha Norwalk Laura Walks Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Exploring new territory every day. This is Alternative Talk 1150.
Okay, we're back. This is Uranus return because it's 8 degrees 55 minutes of Gemini, and it's not just there's 3 of them, and we don't have to dissect this because really I have probably 5 or 8 talks in this one today. But the fact is, it's a 7-year period, and the United States does have Uranus at 5, almost 9 degrees in Gemini. But you can see that our south node is going to have a reverse nodal return during these 3 times. And this isn't until that magic year of, after 27 and 28. So it's a ways off. But between this transformation about south node, for evolutionary astrologers, which all 3 of us are, besides other things, the nodes and Pluto. So Aquarius, the collective, the group any thoughts? We're changing. What is our higher consciousness? How are we going to be making groups and connections and it will, we don't know yet, but I think those are going to be areas along with.
I mean, it's still several years out, but that Uranus return for the US. So more of this, we'll see in 2 years, how things continue to be reinvented and that revolutionary energy, and where does that take us? And because of how the retrograde happens to hit, that we do get multiple passes.
But just yes, this is 2 years out, but just like a Saturn return, if you have Saturn like at 8 or 10 or 12 degrees of a sign, when Saturn moves into your sign, you're already in the process of that return processing. Mm-hmm. And so, most people know about the Saturn return or a birthday, which is a solar return. The sun is vitality. And on our solar return, we celebrate the return of the sun on our annual birthday. The Saturn return is kind of like Saturnian energy is serious. It's responsible. It gets real. There's a contractive energy. But Uranus it's back to what we already talked about. Uranus is about awakening. It's about blasting through the restraints of Saturn. And even at our Uranus opposition halfway through the Uranus cycle at about age 41, 2, 3, right in there, we kind of often, many of us look at what we held back to become an adult, in our early 30s. And now we kind of look at what we can do beyond that to kind of break free of those restraints. And so, although individuals typically don't live an active life enough to say at my Uranus return at around age 83 or 4 or 85, countries go through a Uranus return every 84 years. And when the United States goes through its Uranus return every 84 years, instead of getting serious, it's basically breaking out of its old patterns and reinventing itself.
Yeah.
And liberating.
That's what this process is about. And it started this week already, even though the actual return is 2 years off. We're in that process today.
Thank you. That is good. And just to mention, because I think I have a slide later and we'll probably go past it pretty quick, folks that are listening, but there's since it's at 6 degrees with the nodes, when Uranus comes to 6 degrees of Gemini, it is at Thales' point of resolution. And it's going to be, there's a whole dialogue of like a zigzag between July, right about this period, a little bit before.
Is zigzag a technical astrology word?
It is now. Thank you. Laura, did you have a thought? Can we read or go?
Because we've got a bunch of slides to get through.
So this is a slide that I added because of the previous slide that you just showed, because this is a year from now. This is July 19th, 2026. And we can see here already that Uranus the transiting planets are around the outer wheel, and that Uranus is not at 8 degrees yet, where the inside wheel is, which is the Declaration of Independence, the so-called Sibley chart that many astrologers use for the birth of the United States. But Uranus is at 4 degrees, but this is within 2 days of the first of 5 exact trines between Uranus and Pluto. The last Uranus-Pluto trine was in 1921, when we were at the beginning of the decade of the Roaring 20s. Everything was flying. This was also the beginnings of quantum physics, the establishment of the Niels Bohr quantum physics, the Institute of Physics in Copenhagen, where I actually lectured just a couple of weeks ago. This was like an exciting period. And so this was within 2 days of the exact Uranus-Pluto trine. Remember, it was the Uranus-Pluto conjunction that created the 60s, and it was the Uranus-Pluto square that created the disruptions of the 2010s, whether it was the Arab Spring or the Occupy Wall Street, or so much changes that happened through the 2010s. The reintegration of so many of the 1960s revolutions, whether it was power, money, gender issues,
Food,
civil rights, and so on. And at this particular chart, we have Uranus at 4 degrees of Gemini and Pluto at 4 degrees of Aquarius. But Neptune is at 4 degrees of Aries, trining both of them. And Jupiter is at 4 degrees of Leo, trining Neptune. And at the same time, Jupiter is at 4 degrees of Leo. And remember, in the US chart, Jupiter and Venus are at 3 and 5 degrees of Cancer. Their midpoint is 4 degrees of Cancer, which is what Neptune will be squaring. And on top of that, this is the halfway cycle in the United States' Saturn cycle, because this is transiting Saturn.
It's opposite,
at 14,
exactly.
Opposite its natal Saturn at 14 Libra, with Mars at the point of Thales. This is going to be
shattering.
Well, and we were talking about this before we went live. I think this chart, this July 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th or so, is in some way such an important event that what we're experiencing now in the chart that you showed earlier, Sue, that had the opposition with the points of Thales, this chart is basically the mother of that chart, even though it's a year into the future. And this is the chart that's the great attractor that's pulling us in a direction that will be, really aiming us at this total transformation that we're already at the edge of. That's the short wrap about this chart. But I think it's really important to see this in light of the previous chart you just made, because this is also part of the process leading to the actual Uranus return a year or two later.
Yes. Yes. There were thoughts.
Well, and I think, to me, it's some of the interesting, right? How to look at all of this change in a way that can create inspiration as opposed to fear and anxiety, because that
exactly.
Some of that
a lot of
Uranian
opportunity with sextiles. Absolutely, there's a lot of kinetic. And think of any chart; it has something there to register into.
But the sextiles, unlike trines, mean you gotta. If you don't take advantage of the opportunity, nothing happens, and that's why it's so important to understand that we need to be doing things today. We can't wait until
now wants action.
It'll be too late. That's
right. The universe loves action. It's what evolution is, nothing but one change to the next. And at the moment right now is where they always say the action is. So I really think the one problem is if there's a bunch of actions happening, then you wonder which to do first. But you know what? Not to worry. Just grab something and run.
It's Gemini, so we've got to multitask. So we can't just do it.
Well, in fact, we have not too long. We're going to run right through this pretty quick. This is just to tell folks, hey, it is an 84-year orbit that from sign to sign, and it's a 7-year cycle when it's in that sign. And this one is 2025 to 2033, which we've mentioned. The last one was during the 40s. The one before that was 1858 to 1866, just before and after that dynamic time with Abraham Lincoln. And then 1774 to 1782, when we became declaring ourselves. And there's a lot of other things for liberty and countries being founded, and liberating people and ideas with books and machines.
Yeah, a lot of people have pointed out that the United States has been in a major war in each of the Uranus Gemini. It was the U.S. War against King George, the U.S. Revolutionary War in the 1700s, the American Civil War in the 1850s, or actually 1860, World War II in the early 1940s. And people have been freaking out saying we're at the edge of war. And I would just point out two things. Number one, there's never been a time in the past 150 years when the United States has not been at war. And also, there's never been a time when Uranus has ingressed into Gemini with trines to Pluto and sextiles to Uranus and Neptune and Saturn.
The patterns.
And maybe most importantly, the fact is that we are at war, but if there are physical brush fires or even major conflagrations, the real war here is a war of defining what reality is. This is an information war. We've moved into a cyber realm, and there is a war for who gets to define what's real. And that's the real war that's going on.
I would agree. I had this for the halftime. Go ahead, Lori. Did you have a thought?
Well, we've got a lot to get through.
Yeah, we do. Okay. This is about Goa in India. Initiation into astrology, but it's right on Rick's website, which is...
Yeah, actually, if you go to heavenandearthworkshops.com, even without the rest of it, that's the easiest way to find complete information, day-by-day curriculum, events, and so on. We don't need to waste time or use time up here on that, but it's worth going to and checking out.
It will be wonderful. There's no doubt about it.
And this is just my monthly live event at Soul Food Coffee House in Redmond. If you live in the area, stop on by. If not, we live stream it. And the previous month or the previous months.
It's a lot of fun to go. I used to always go at 6 o'clock until 8.
Yeah.
Actually, it might be 6:30.
6:30.
Oh, it is 6:30. Okay, we get there at 6 and get there to eat and find a table.
Okay,
and Patreon. All right, but good stuff. And Laura, here you have your Mythic Sky story time. It's right on your beautiful, recreated, furbished, website, and Cosmic Conversations, which you have to be in Georgia. So if you're visiting, go there.
Yeah.
And and then here, tell about your.
So this is the fourth time I've been down in Nicaragua, helping my friend run this Goddess Awakening retreat, and it's right on where the jungle meets the ocean. It's absolutely we get woken up by howler monkeys and get to see baby turtles run into the sea. And she just bought a fourth property on the beach, so she now owns an acre of beachfront property. So the retreat center is expanding. So
I just want to go between both of these retreats. This really sounds great. For Talk Cosmos, there's a whole potpourri of things, and it's on our playlist. And there was a really fun one with Astrojam. You might catch that one out. And vibrational astrology is fabulous. Every quarter for the solstice and equinox, you really hear some of the messages because it lasts for the whole session. Okay, and then to remind people, there was Convergence, which was, but this is Fractal Cosmos, and it's the first vibrational astrology conference of its type, and it'll be over Labor Day weekend. It's very reasonable. It's online this year, so check that out. Go to fractalcosmos.org. Oh, and I didn't mention, I guess it'll be on future ones, but I'm part of the wine speaker. Oh boy, I'll just have to wait. We're having a conference, but it'll be in October. We'll tell you about it. Rushing along, like peering out to the skies. We are moving ahead. I won't go into a lot. I've got questions, but the fact is Uranus and Saturn have a cycle. All the planets, of course, do. It's a 46-year cycle. And the last one was 1988. The next one will be in 2079. last one was right on the galactic center, 27 Sag, and this one coming up. But the point being that all these aspects that I was trying to figure out about between Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, all fall between the one coming up on August 11th, which is a sextile at the very beginning. It's like Alpha, 01 or 1 degree Aries to 1 degree Uranus. And then in 2032, just prior, maybe half a year between, or when it finishes, or a year, it's at 28 degrees Gemini. So what does that mean? Maybe we're finding form. Maybe there will be a new form that we can launch ahead. I don't know. Shall we jump to the next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the point of Thales. This is just to remind exactly what we talked about, that Uranus will be that point of Thales
to the nodes.
Thank you. That is releasing that energies, that dynamic Aquarian.
Well, and that negotiator, right? That go between, that ability to almost like get those nodes to be in conversation with each other.
And it's just prior to this Uranus return, which will be the 26th. And these are the dates. In 2027, it'll be the 26th of July, the 5th of November, which is always retrograde, and then in 28, the 11th. But what more? Because I want to get to our questions. What was this? Oh, this is just clarifying what Rick thankfully brought up, was that back in the 60s, 65 to 67, Uranus and Pluto were conjunct about in Virgo. And then 2012 to 15, they were in Aries, about 15 degrees, squaring for a lot of action. And now they will be in this trine. And trines are not only flowing, they want to flow. That's what vibrational astrology has determined. And it will be between 2026, right when Rick was bringing this up, July 18th or the 17th, just prior to that, all through to the 28th, to 2028. If I've got mumble mouth, it's because I'm trying to rush on. And it's early because it's the first 7 years of this long cycle of Pluto. So it's going to be anywhere from about 4 degrees to 8 degrees, give or take some minutes. So it's potent. It's potent. Get ready. Let's get to our questions. Trauma. You know, for EA people, it's the shock. Sometimes it's hard to get that authentic self. What is it? How am I fixing to be? And so we have this question. Go ahead.
I mean,
I think 2 more questions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and 5 minutes. So, I mean, just that I think, you know, as we had talked about, Rick was bringing up that idea of like, so that shock, that can be, that's what can be traumatic, right? It's like things aren't what I expected, and so then how do we integrate, or how, right? And so, or how do we catch the wave instead of being pummeled by it? When there's that expect the unexpected, okay, or just being able to be present in whatever happens, rather than going into a trauma response and having our nervous system, which we could really give Uranus in terms of an energy, is governing the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system in a lot of ways, right? So how do we not go into that trauma response and instead go into curiosity instead of trauma?
There's something about wiggling and moving the energy, you know, like Aikido doesn't resist the incoming punch. It pulls it in and works and lets it flow through. It's almost like if you have your tongue in the electrical socket, that's not a time to freeze. It's a time to, you know, jump all over and let that energy. I'm not saying anyone should do that, just to be clear. But there's something about what you're saying is not resisting that flow of energy, which may feel like a shock, but it's really a high frequency flow.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of like light. As you know, light is a wave, but if you stop at any moment, we're in the moment. That's almost like being in the eye of the storm. And if it takes practice to be at the moment, because we are emotional beings, we have a little attachments. Oh, there it went down the river, or somehow, but yet we learn. It's a process. Yes, it's a process.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Well, awareness and language. I have to mention about that breaking the codes of language was how World War II managed to, and we have, language is nothing more but a bunch of codes that maybe we will. Yeah.
And that being part of that idea with the wars that people have talked about, but it was also the Emancipation Proclamation. It was also so it was revolutionary language, and seeing how we can be revolutionary.
The right word can be freeing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is.
using that.
Yeah,
using our words.
We can talk for a few minutes. We have music now. Neptune has come along. It's mitigating the changes. Yeah,
and that
it's
idea
that dynamic
like,
exchange of ideas. That's all I wanted to pick up.
Well,
on.
and what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, speak up even if your voice shakes.
That's
that
it.
To me
That's it.
is,
Speak up.
Right.
And there was a quick slide on AI, and I just want to say that artificial intelligence may not be artificial. There may be an alchemical intelligence that we're getting to engage also.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.